Well, we're back from the break. Let's get it done here with Karibu East Africa. Karibu East Africa, habari ya leo East Africa. How are you doing this particular morning? Here to also remind you that, well, investment in Uganda is something that has actually transitioned and changed, ideally with more of social media and the digital era shaping it up. Obviously, *292# is the USSD code for those MTN subscribers, and well, kickstart of your investment journey as well. Probably reason as to why this is so is because of the fact that with Zabo, a platform by Altex East Africa reminds you to do something new. What something new can you do today? Use a minimum of 15,000 Ugandan shillings after registration to kickstart off your investment journey with Zabo, a platform by Altex East Africa. The markets here open at 8:15 a.m. and well, they do close at 3:15 p.m. East African Standard Time. But also do note that these markets are closed on public holidays and during weekends. Zabo, my money, my future. Altex East Africa says do something new. Well, with the Karibu East Africa updates, we start off with Kenya, as the IMF has revealed a special audit of spending in President Uhuru's last days before William Ruto took over in August. President William Ruto's administration plans to conduct a special audit into tens of billions of shillings spent in the last days of the previous regime, which without the approval, rather, of lawmakers, according to what the International Monetary Fund has revealed. Now, the scrutiny is part of the commitments of Dr. William Ruto's administration, which was made to the IMF under the multilateral lenders' ongoing 38-month budgetary support plan that has unlocked a 55.07 billion US dollars. That is approximately 55.07 billion US dollars, billion Kenyan shillings, rather, approximately 447.39 billion US dollars. Million US dollars. The Treasury spent 23 billion Kenyan shillings without the approval of Parliament in July and August, which came weeks before the inauguration of President William Ruto. And the unbudgeted spending included 810 million Kenyan shillings to the State House, 2.2 billion Kenyan shillings for building a military research hospital, and 4.5 billion Kenyan shillings for maize flour subsidy. Then another 9.45 billion Kenyan shillings was allocated for road construction and 6 billion Kenyan shillings for the purchase of a 60% stake in Telecom Kenya, turning the operator into a parastatal. Now, the 23 billion Kenyan shillings is part of the 54.6 billion the Treasury had committed to withdrawing from the government's main account without parliamentary approval. Now, Article 223 of the Constitution allows the Treasury to withdraw money from the consolidated fund without the approval of MPs, but should seek the lawmakers' nod within 2 months through a supplementary budget. The unbudgeted disbursements are, however, capped at 10% of the appropriated expenditures. The Treasury has, over the years, come under sharp scrutiny for allegedly abusing the constitutional provision by spending money on unbudgeted projects and coming to Parliament for backing. The Parliamentary Budget Office, a unit that advises Parliament on financial and budgetary matters, in September asked MPs to come up with a law that would force the Treasury to first approach Parliament and discuss the intention of expenditures before disbursing any sort of money. So this is coming in at the fact that this is one of President William Ruto's commitments that was made to the IMF under the multilateral lenders' ongoing 38-month budgetary support plan that unlocked a 55.07 billion Kenyan shillings, approximately 447.39 million US dollars. Well, they are trying to audit, and they will be auditing the last spendings of the former president, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta. Off to Tanzania, as Tanzania has signed a 2.2 billion US dollar railway deal with China. This particular one was signed on Tuesday, a contract with a Chinese company to build the final section of a railway line aimed at linking the country's main port with its neighbors. The 2,561 kilometer, 1,600 mile line will link the Indian Ocean port of Dar es Salaam to Mwanza on Lake Victoria, with eventual spurs to Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, and Uganda. Now, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, who witnessed the signing, said that the construction of the final section of the standard gauge railway from Tabora to Kigoma in eastern Tanzania would be completed in 2026, 9 years after it began. The new railway line would reduce cargo transportation costs between the Dar es Salaam port and the DRC from a minimum of $6,000 per ton to about $4,000 once it becomes fully operational. Now, meanwhile, transportation time would fall from 30 days by truck to 30 hours in 2027. China is the biggest investor in Africa, pumping billions of dollars into railway roads, ports, and airports in exchange of securing oil and commodity supply such as copper and cobalt. Now, these infrastructure projects are built through vast loans issued by China, but Beijing has been criticized for lending too much to poor countries without sufficiently scrutinizing their ability to repay back. Now, Tanzania's railway system has two existing networks, one linking the East African nation to Zambia, and then the other connecting it to Kenya and Uganda. And while China does remain as one of the key donors to African nations, not only the other poor countries, but on the African continent, becoming a very huge bilateral partner when it comes to trade, financing, economy, and obviously the financial assistance. Lastly, from Karibu, East Africa, Rwanda has welcomed a global deal to save species from extinction. This comes after the country adopted and welcomed the historical agreement to address the loss of biodiversity and restore natural ecosystems. The agreement, named Global Biodiversity Framework, was adopted by Rwanda at the UN Biodiversity Conference in Montreal, which was concluded on Monday, December 19, 2022. The government agreed to move on with urgent actions to halt human-caused extinction of species known to be under threat and to promote their recovery. The deal follows scientific warnings that humans are causing the start of the Earth's 6-month extinction event, the largest loss of life since the time of dinosaurs. Speaking at the final plenary, Jean-Jacques Mujawamaria, who is the Minister for Environment, congratulated China at the COP15 president and encouraged nations to work hard to fulfill the commitments which were made in the new Global Biodiversity Framework adopted on Monday in Montreal. And Rwanda was proud to play a smart part in this effort. Many years of negotiations led to a Global Biodiversity Framework, and now the hard work begins to fulfill the commitments they are making for themselves, each other, the Mother Nature, and of course, addressing climate change. Rwanda has committed to increasing the resources and funds spent on biodiversity preservation and restoring them from the current 0.5 to 0.9% or to 2% of the national GDP, in line with the global goal to double the percentage of gross domestic product as well that was spent on biodiversity preservation and restoration back in the years. So the governments have furthermore agreed on urgent actions basing on the Global Biodiversity Framework, and Rwanda has already adopted to a historical agreement that was made during this same particular summit. And that's it for Karibu East Africa. Let's now turn our eyes to the SMB international news to see which business headlines are making way across the globe. Although internationally, Ghana does not seem to go off the news lately with the situation that is happening with their economy. Now, surprisingly, on the other hand, Ghana has suspended payment of most of the external debts. Ghana suspended payments of most of its external debt, effectively defaulting as the country struggles to plug its cavernous balance of payment deficit. Its finance minister revealed this early this week that it will not service debts, including the Eurobonds, a report that we had yesterday, that also includes commercial loans and most bilateral loans, calling the decision an interim emergency measure, while some board holders criticized a lack of clarity in such a decision that was taken by the government. The government stands ready to engage in discussions with all of its external creditors to make Ghana's debt sustainable, according to the finance ministry. And Ghana had already announced a domestic debt exit program and said an external restructuring was being negotiated with creditors. The suspension of debt payments reflects the perilous state of the economy, which had led the government last week to reach a $3 billion staff level agreement with the IMF. Now, on the other hand, the IMF has said a comprehensive debt restructuring condition of its support is on the way. The country has been struggling to refinance its debt since the start of the year after downgrades by multiple credit ratings agencies and concerns. It has been performing poorly against the US dollar. Apparently, it will not be able to issue new Eurobonds now. This has set Ghana's debt further into the distressed territory. Its public debt stood at 467.4 billion Ghanaian cedi. That is approximately 55 billion US dollars as per Refinitiv Acon data in September, of which 42% was domestic. If you look at the kind of debt that is actually hitting the Ghanaian economy. Now, on the other hand, its public debt standing in there, that is 42% of the public debt coming in from the domestic side of the thing, of the findings here. Now, Accra had a balance of payments deficit of more than 3.4 billion US dollars in September, down from a surplus of 1.6 billion US dollars as well at the same time last year, while 70 to 100% of the government revenue, which is currently going towards servicing the debt, the country's inflation has continued to shoot up to as much as 50%. That is according to the latest findings in November 2022. So Ghana has been experiencing what some say is the worst economic crisis in the generation. And of course, we've been having these reports whereby most of the legislators were asking the finance minister, that is to at least to at least lay down and resign from office. So it is something that he apparently was saved by the president in there. So the crisis in Ghana economically is something that is still being addressed relatively, I should say, but it's hitting the economy. Mere fact that the inflation has already shoot up to 50%. That's a huge percentage in there for a generation. Now, we cross to Europe as Amazon is set to make big business changes in the European Union settlement. So these comes after the major changes are to its business practices to end competition problems in Europe by giving customers more visible choices when buying products, and for the Prime members, more delivery options. The European Union regulators did reveal this on Tuesday. The European Union's Executive Commission accepted that the legal binding commitments from Amazon are set to resolve 2 antitrust investigations, allowing the company to avoid a legal battle with the European Union's top antitrust watchdog that could potentially have ended with fines worth up to 10% of annual worldwide revenue. The agreement marks another advance of European Union authorities as they clamp down on the power of big tech companies, and this comes just a day after the Commission accused Facebook parent Meta of distorting competition in the classified ads business. So the 27-member bloc has hit Google with billions in fines, open investigations into Apple, and is set to enact sweeping regulations by 2024 aimed at preventing so-called digital gatekeepers from dominating their online markets. The argument only applies to Amazon's business practices in Europe, yet, though some portions of the deal will end in 5 years. Amazon will have to make the changes by June. Amazon has been able to offer concessions in July, which have solved the 2 investigations. Now, it also improved those initial proposals after the Commission tested them out and received feedback from consumer groups, delivery companies, book publishers, and the side of the academics, if you are to follow and look at that. Now, lastly, from the international news, we head to Nigeria. There are concerns over Nigeria's yam exports. Nigeria is the leading producer of yam, but is exporting less. Where should the problem be? So the yams are the 5th most widely harvested crop in the country, in the West African economy of Nigeria, and one of the most expensive to produce if you look at that. Now, the planting and harvesting processes require significant labor input if you are to look at the agriculture point of view in Nigeria. The planting, harvesting, and the processes require significant labor input. The yam seeds are expensive, and the supply of seed is limited. This is according to the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Ernest Umukihe. Now, Nigeria is the leading producer of fresh yams, yet it's unfortunate to note that despite the huge production, the country exports less of this particular product, Where would the problem be? Is it the weakness of the farmers or the agriculture ministry in Nigeria? Experts say deliberate action must be taken to move yam production, as well as processing and marketing to the next level, in line with the international best practices that will ensure the export of yam within the African continent, within West Africa, within the West African region. And only that though, but also to look at the European markets and the East, as well as the Americas, if you are to look at exporting of these yams, because where would the problem be really? Now, the General Secretary, Yam Dealers Association of Nigeria, Ahmed Ibrahim Salisu, did reveal that the government should collaborate with relevant stakeholders to resecute yam exports from this particular situation, as well as Nigeria boosting wealth and also collaborating with stakeholders to make sure that with building and boosting wealth, they will be able to at least also boost food security with Nigeria. Now, he did note, Mr. Ahmed noted that the government can help to expand the crop-based production by giving out fertilizers and loans to farmers, and also providing security for these particular farmers. The agriculture sector in Nigeria apparently employs approximately 60% of the labor force and contributes to 40% of the country's GDP, micro DB in there. So when you look at the situation from situations about how Nigeria is moving on swiftly, you'll be able to realize that these are some of the key challenges that the African continent is facing. Most of the sectors in Africa are facing the same issue regarding how the agriculture sector is contributing greatly to the GDP. But then when you look at the exports from the sector being reported to be less than what is being produced, or maybe not even close or near to the rates of production, clearly shows you that we have issues and factors that we need to look at to at least address such a concern. Because you do expect now, for Nigeria being the leading producer of yams, then you would wish them to be exporting more. Just like if you're to look at the fact that Uganda is one of the leading exporters or the leading producers of coffee across the continent, what then happens when it comes to the exporting numbers? Why do we then export few numbers? So these are some of the things that we'll need to look at and address as the entire African continent. Because when you look at the manufacturing side, we may not be that good, but things that come to the natural factors that have been where we've been blessed so well in regards to the agriculture sector, we've been blessed heavily. These are things that we can stand up and push so that we are highly recognized by the entire international space. So I believe so that not only in Nigeria, but this is a challenge that most of the African governments and government states, as well as the different finance ministries across the African continent as well, need to be able to look at, tackle it differently to ensure that stakeholders in the agricultural sector mainly also benefit from the fact that if we are the leading producers of any agricultural product, then we should as well be among the leading exporters of the same at the end of it all, because our levels of exports, regardless of the fact that we need to also tap into the available local markets, but then how about bringing in some foreign revenues in there in regards to the levels of exports that are coming up? That will be something helpful to the economies at the end of the day. Something that we should be looking at and focusing more on is looking at our levels of exports so that we ensure that they increase further and beyond. All right. And this particular morning, you get to realize that is it for the Karibu East Africa and the SMB international news. But well, besides that, just a few minutes till the markets on the Zabo platforms open, just to remind you that if you have no account yet, you can use your NIN and follow the USSD code *292#. Register with Zabo. After registration in the next 24 hours, you'll be ready to invest in bonds and securities. That is how simple and how easy it is for you to invest in bonds, securities, and purchasing stocks. Well, it's just with a minimum of 15,000 Ugandan shillings, the investment journey will quickly start off. I do believe that is very simple and relatively easy for anyone to kickstart off your investment journey. The markets open at 8:15 a.m. and close at 3:15 p.m. East African Standard Time. So do a favor to take part in this new investment journey with Zabo, which reminds you that my money is my future. And of course, well, Alltech East Africa says do something new. These markets are only closed on public holidays and during the weekends, but the rest of the days they are open for you to invest in bonds and securities. And also be reminded that we do have our social media platforms running. Twitter is Smart24 TV. Please do remember to follow. And our Facebook is Smart24 TV official. Instagram is Smart24_TV. Our website is www.smart24.tv. And our YouTube channel is Smart24 TV Live, where we are streaming as well. So if at all you've missed any program, any interview, that is where you can definitely get us on. But do remember to subscribe onto the YouTube channel. This is your daily Kickstarter, Monday to Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 9:50 a.m. every Monday to Friday. I'm Jerry Paul Sonko. Coming up after the break, we do have social media trends and more discussion regarding the tax mobilization in Uganda. This time around, we're looking at return filing, but not only that, we shall be having more business updates on your way. Good morning.